Tullynally.
Friday panel. And, well, it's a large panel today. And, of course, we have our co-host Octavia still here. Michael Farrell is branch manager with Sherry FitzGerald, Davitt and Davitt, which has branches in Kinahan, Mullingar, and, of course, here in Castlepollard. Good morning.
Good morning, Will.
What sort of house prices have we got around here? It's a very nice, salubrious, scenic area.
Well, we were just talking to the chaps earlier. This is actually a strange area because you have very good employment around here, without naming any companies between Old Castle, Castlepollard. You're not far from Mullingar. So, like, let's say compared to Kinahan, that which is more a commuter town, you have employment around here, but house prices are rising. There's a figure there, 6%. Unfortunately, I could give you examples of closer to 20%.
This is the increase year on year.
Yeah. From this time last year, in certain areas, there's a 20% increase. The average nationwide is about 6%, but there are 20%. It's just extraordinary, the demand. And of course, it's a supply and demand market, I suppose. However, there's all the other factors that come into it. But there is certainly a huge demand and very low supply at the moment. So prices are increasing. We had 10 interest rate increases last year in about 14 months. That did in somewhat put a little bit of a damper on it at certain times. But now there's talk of interest rate reductions. Will they come as fast as the increases came? We're not sure, but certainly it's getting people out here there into the market looking to buy.
One man who will be very pleased to hear that local house prices in some situations are up 20% is Keith Fay, because he moved to Castlepollard only last year and is a member of Ireland's biggest heavy metal band.
Did I say that?
That's what the slogan says.
Yeah. Well, you look at our Spotify monthly listeners, the evidence is there. No,
What's the name of the band?
We're called Cruachan, Cruachan. We're going 32 years. We've a crazy story. We've had Shane MacGowan produce our albums. Our latest album, we made it to number 8 in the Irish top 10, and not many people know what top 10s are anymore. But yeah, I bought my house last year. I paid what I paid. I became a remote worker during COVID. I had anywhere in the country to go to. I ended up in Offaly, believe it or not. Bought a house there. I wanted to get out of the city out of Dublin, so I went as remote and as rural as you could possibly imagine. I thought that's what I wanted. I put that house back on the market within 2 weeks of moving.
I know, I have to probe a little bit now.
Yeah.
Just because there are listeners in Walsh Island.
Yes.
Walsh Island is where you ended up.
I can imagine the stories. Remember that guy from Dublin that came and went in 2 weeks? the weirdo, yeah. But the house was beautiful, stunning. It was on an acre and a quarter of land, an old Bordemona house that was renovated and done up. But even the house itself, like 1/3 of it was heated by gas central heating, the other 2/3 by underfloor heating with a solid fuel stove. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get my head around this?
This isn't the best bit, guys.
Yeah, it was.
We have to talk about the ghost.
It was the remoteness. It was how rural it was. I just knew it and half my friends and family saying you need to give it 6 months. The other half saying if you know now, you're gone. So it was at the end of the first 2 weeks. It was the third weekend. Myself and Lauren, my girlfriend, were up in bed, and we both wake up bolt upright, and I just heard these footsteps walk across the bed, and I said, "Did you hear that?" "Yeah." "Oh God." "Okay, right." And we went back asleep, and that was it. It was like the last straw broke the camel's back. I'm done. Now I'd made my mind up already. I'd gone too rural, too remote. And it was about 2 days later, I was in my sister's with Lauren. I said, "Lauren, what was that noise that we heard?" And she said, "Oh, your bike fell over in the hall." It's like, oh, for crying out loud. So
that was the ghost.
There was no ghost. There was no ghost. But look, the mind was made up. I said, it just wasn't going to work. I wanted to get out.
Why Castlepollard?
So I had the option to go anywhere in the country. I'm a remote worker. I'm leaving Dublin, and I landed in Castlepollard. My sister said, "Check out Castlepollard. It's gorgeous." I wanted to be out of Dublin City. I wanted to be in the countryside, rural. But it turned out I want humans around me as well, not the absolute isolation that I had in Walsh Island. So I just thought it was beautiful. There's pubs. The hotel is gorgeous.
Lovely people.
Lovely people. Met so many great people here. Now, the only issue I had when I moved in, there was no broadband in the house. I was working off the 4G network. I work from home. I'm on Microsoft Teams meetings all the time, and that worked. I eventually got the broadband in. The 100 meg copper line was all I could get. I could only reach about 30 or 40 meg on that line, and that worked from Microsoft Teams. But now the last 2 months, they brought fibre into Castlepollard. So we were just talking about house prices going up. stick 10% on any house price here now that they have fibre in the area, because that is critical, especially so many remote workers in Ireland.
Oh, you should have been here a few years ago.
I know.
A little bit further north, great company called Mr. Crumb, based in Finney.
Yes, just out in Finney.
Yeah. And they used to have to drive in to Mullingar to send and receive emails.
That's insane.
That's only a few years ago.
Wow, what a contrast. Well, there you go. And the company I work for now, it's a big ratings company, Standard & Poor's. Everyone knows them. They rated Ireland like bad in the noughties. But Castlepollard, now if you look at their location map, we've got the Dublin office, you've got the New York office, and you'll actually see a little dot now of Castlepollard as a hub where I'm based.
Can you put in a good word for my bank loan?
Yeah, absolutely.
This whole working from home, I was just talking to Keith outside, and I was just saying that, I won't tell you how long I'm in this business, but years ago the three most important things were property, location. Now the first question we're asked is broadband, fibre, all that sort of stuff, and of course schools and all are important, but the fibre and the broadband, people actually come with pieces of equipment to test what it's like at the particular house.
Yeah, I did.
So, and they come, and then of course the vacant property grant, and we just had a sales meeting this morning, and our CEO Aidan Davitt was just explaining to us how the stage payments hopefully will come in on the vacant property grant, which will be a huge step forward. The uptake on that is actually very, very low. You think it's a no-brainer, but it's not, because you have to use registered builders, tax clearance and all that thing, and you have to do all the work and then draw the grant. So financing is a problem. Stage payments will be a huge step forward. And you could go any direction from where we're sitting here now, and you'd probably find a dozen vacant properties within a couple of kilometres. I mean, I looked at one out the road here yesterday, hasn't been lived in for years, lovely little cottage and half an acre. I won't tell you what it probably will go to the market at, but if it goes to the market, it should be snapped up, done up, fabulous.
Very subtle sales pitch, I know.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Subtle's my middle name,
and we still haven't introduced the final member of our panel today, Noel Kinahan. How long are you in Castlepollard now, Noel?
Noel Kinahan.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Kinahan.
Nothing to do with, my family originated. I don't have to finish that, okay? My family originated, you probably know the Kinahans in Moat. Kinahan Commercials, that's where my family come, Clonmacnoise, that area. So I'm like Octavia there, blow in, I'm only here 30 odd years. And I get my certificate next year, I believe.
Yeah, I'll arrange that.
So I moved down here over 30 years ago, raised a family, I see you had Stephen O'Brien on earlier on. We got involved with setting up of the whole idea of the Castlepollard Road development, which since then has morphed into a much bigger thing, and this is going to be fantastic for Castlepollard, But I'm here 30 odd years. Love the town. There seems to be a certain vibrancy coming to the area at the moment. I think a lot of it's got to do with, and Keith actually said that to me recently. He said there seems to be, and it's really about people getting involved within the community, and to be able to, for instance, the way the different sectors are set up in Team Towns. I have to say the County Council are doing a great job and actually bringing this here. And as you know, we did have Kieran Malooly here some time back to try and invigorate the town and to...
Was that the broadcaster or politician?
At the time, he was a broadcaster.
Broadcaster at the time.
He was a broadcaster, but I think if you look at his background, he's very community orientated, and he spoke about different projects he worked on, etc. And
I think he was working for Leader at the time.
He was, and he was. That's right. He was moving up to Longford County Council as well after that, I think.
As a tourism activator.
That's right. Yeah. So he came to the town. He did activate the people here, and. The success now, we had our first official meeting on our own last night, and went very smooth. We know what projects that we're looking at into the future, but it's about, he sparked the people into getting involved, being able to do it for yourself, the different sectors, the breakdown, etc. A few little hiccups now, setting up a bank accounts and all that type of stuff takes time. But yes, but moving back to the originator there, you were talking about the properties, and I won't tell you what I bought my house for 30 odd years ago. It was a derelict house. No, I'm not going to tell you.
Suffice to say, there's been inflation since.
There's been inflation, and look, my background, I originally moved down from Clontarf previous to that then, I lived on the same street as the Fury brothers in Ballyfermot. Joe Duffy I used to play soccer with him outside, you know.
You didn't beat him up with karate, did you?
Well, any chance I get now, I probably would. No, it's Joe. I'm only joking. No, but Joe was... so it was a great community that was up there. But
tell us about your karate background.
Well, I'm... My age... I have a bus pass. Okay, so I started when I was about 14 years of age. Local karate club down there. I was fairly lucky at the time. My instructor was he did judo. He represented Ireland in the Munich Olympics back in '72. So you get an idea.
Don't downplay your own achievements now.
Yeah, well, I represented Ireland on a number of occasions. I was part of the setup of the national body, etc. But what I did find was that, you know, sometimes when we were going to the World Championships, I remember one particular one, we were going to Egypt to the World Championships, and 2 weeks beforehand you were saying, give us 500 quid to pay for the flights. Now that's the way it was then. So you were picked for the national team and you were paying your own way. I remember the guy, Paddy Murphy was his name, he was going to the Munich Olympics and they gave him a tracksuit and he got a train across. You know, so, but things have changed, you know.
For some sports, we were talking to a female weightlifter last week.
I heard that.
And very much the same. You have to reach into your own pocket for your expenses.
Well, it's interesting because we have, the GAA is very strong here. One of the people who represent the sporting, Abby Devine, you know, we had a meeting here last week and there was a guy doing taekwondo, which is a Korean art. I do a Japanese one. And he was having some of the same problems. So, I mean, not much has changed, but I do think people, what we call the minority sports, I think there's, you see the ladies' team now are being, football, soccer team, you know, they're getting paid now, etc. And I think that money has to be spread out amongst different sports. So kind of getting back to about the price of houses around here. This is generations. You're talking maybe now the last 30 years. You know, when I was growing up, my father came from Moat. He came to Dublin. It was either get on the ferry and go across to England to get the job, but he took a job in the army. That's all that was available. He raised 8 of us in a house in Ballyfermot. Joe Duffy was down the road. The Fury brothers were further, like across the square there, and it was a great community, you know. But the supply of these type of houses, when the developers moved in or the government said, no, we let the developers, and we see where that goes. They crashed the whole country here. You know, so what's happening at the moment is we can talk about supply and demand. You know, I think over successive governments, they have failed to actually pick up on this end of the market, I think. And whose interest is this happening? You know, house prices are going up. You know, they're making major profits out of it, as we can see over the last number of years. And I think what really needs to happen is they need to concentrate on sustainable housing, you know, built by the state the way they did the Ballyfermos, the Tallis, the Tullochs, all of those areas there. So there has to be a balance. We left it to the developers and now we're paying the piper. So
I suppose, look, it depends on your politics, but all in one camp or all in another probably isn't the best way to go.
It's a balance. There has to be a balance in the whole thing.
So, on our Friday panel, just to reiterate, because we haven't even touched on the topics of the week yet, and it's 20 to 12. Michael Farrell is branch manager with Sherry FitzGerald, Davitt and Davitt. Noel Kinahan is the vice treasurer of Castlepollard town teams. Keith Fay is a member of Ireland's largest heavy metal band. We're going to stick with that.
Okay.
I'm not wearing the Standard & Poor's suit today.
No, wearing the Crook on t-shirt.
And Octavia, of course, is our guest presenter who will kick things off with a panel after these.
Midlands Today's Friday panel. With thanks to the caring hands of Comfort Keepers Home Care. Nurturing thoughts, caring moments. ComfortKeepers.ie.
Now, if you're just joining us, I'm Will Faulkner and Octavia Tulloch is co-hosting from Castlepollard today. What items float your boat? Where will we start?
We were thinking we might talk about a number of items, but one of them was talking about, does coffee really lower heart disease and dementia risk and improve sports performance? And how much caffeine is too much? Do you drink a lot of caffeine, Keith?
Well, interesting that you should say that. Yeah, I love a coffee like anyone else. When I got the new house here, so I can't wait to get my coffee machine.
How many a day? How many cups?
1 or 2,
Okay.
pretty normal. But and my cups of tea are important. But I did notice over the last few years I was getting heart palpitations. I went to see my cardiologist, which was Leo Varadkar's boyfriend, lovely guy, Matt Barry. Matt Barry or Barry, absolutely lovely,
Barrett,
lovely guy. Matt Barry, yeah, fantastic. Took care of me. Said I have a heart arrhythmia, nothing to worry about, but keep an eye on it. So I had beta blockers and so on. Over the last 2 years, I thought they were getting a bit worse. I went for a full cardio exam just before Christmas, but before I went in, I cut coffee out of my diet completely, and I noticed my heart palpitations just disappear overnight. So it was interesting to see that that's in the news, that coffee is good for your heart, because I just know, grown up, like coffee, caffeine, too much caffeine, palpitations. And you're talking to a guy who drinks maybe 2 cups of coffee a day, 2 cups of tea. The 2 cups of tea will equal the same amount of caffeine as 1 cup of coffee. That's my experience. I could be an anomaly. I'm probably going to drop dead of a heart attack tomorrow. It was always on the cards.
Don't say that.
But that's my experience with coffee. So, yeah, an interesting one, definitely.
Okay.
I read that article as well, and the first thing I asked, who's writing this? Because on one hand they're saying it's good for you. Years ago they say too much coffee, and we do. It's a bit like some of the fizzy drinks that are out there now, and it's an addiction, and they're caffeine driven. So I look at this, but it's like everything else. It's about moderation. I would say I average 1 cup of coffee a day, maybe around 11 o'clock in the morning, and maybe 2 on some occasions. And if you use moderation in any of your diet, everything's okay. So I'm not really into cutting out this, but I did think that, I just kind of wondered who wrote the article.
Well, it was in the Irish Independent on Wednesday, and I suppose if you go through it, it explores some of the conflicting
evidence, and that's the point I was trying to make. Yeah, so it depends who's writing these things and in whose interest, so that's all I'd like to say on it.
My understanding is it's not caffeine, but it's coffee that they're talking about, and coffee is actually a fermented food.
Well, yes.
And fermentation is incredibly important for our gut biome.
That's true. Yeah.
See, there's pluses and negatives.
However, that isn't what was in this title here.
Yeah, so it's
but
moderation.
It may be in the rest of that report.
Yeah, it's moderation, and it's a balance. Everything is a balance.
But look how coffee has developed in the last 10 or 15 years. I mean, coffee, when I was young fella, was a little drop of syrup you put into hot water. Now you have your frappe and your latte and your flat white and all the rest. Now, if coffee's good for you, I'm going to live forever. Because my previous office was next door to an absolutely super coffee shop, and every excuse you got, if somebody came in to see it, come on, we'll go for coffee.
Yeah.
It was 5-6 cups a day. Now that has reduced. I don't know for what reason. I just don't drink it. I actually drink tea now more so. But years ago you got an Americano. That was it. Now I suppose it's marketing. There's just so many variations of coffee, and everywhere you go, you meet people with cups in their hands. Like we had a sales meeting this morning, and a few people arrived in with the takeaway coffee in their hand. There you are. Octavia has one.
What hasn't been mentioned is price. So if you add up at nearly €4 a coffee, how many you have every day, every week, every month, every year?
It's a major. Yeah.
It's an equivalent to a cigarette habit if you've got a.
Isn't it? It is an addiction in a way.
You've just put me off my coffee.
That was what you intended.
I'm on number 3
You've
today.
paid off your mortgage by now.
Yeah, number 3. But I'll have another at lunch.
That's the markup in the coffee shops. Myself and my girlfriend will always go, I'll have a coffee, just an Americano, it's probably £4. She'll have like a fruit drink, whatever and it's a bit of syrup and water. It's also £4. There's something going on there with the prices.
It's marketing.
Okay, there's another story, and this may not be the most serious on our potential list, but Ireland's most boring tourist attraction revealed. I didn't see anything about this, and I'm quite into tourism, so...
And you're relieved it's not Tullynally.
Oh, Will, stop.
Yeah.
Of course it's not Tullynally Castle.
Well,
beautiful.
I suppose from a tourist point of view, I mean, the Americans come over here. I mean, this...
And we're talking about the Leprechaun Museum, by the way. We didn't actually
Thank
say.
you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, well,
Has anyone been?
I understand how this kind of idea of the leprechaun was brought into the people's minds was when Walt Disney visited Ireland back in early 60s, I think. And then we went back to the US and made this Darby O'Gill and the little people.
The 50s.
50s, was it? Yeah. And before my time.
Yeah. by a minute.
So this whole thing about the leprechaun, and it was a marketing tool that Ireland used. Now we've well moved away from that.
But have we, Noel? I mean, we're still every time an American president or MD comes to Ireland, they have to pull the pint of Guinness behind the counter. The leprechaun, the green hats have to come out, all of that sort of thing. Have we grown out of it?
I would say.
But should we grow? Like our fairy mythology,
exactly.
the Tuatha Dan and the history of them, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's all
that's
part.
Where the leprechauns come from.
So I think if they're making money up there,
but are they?
That is the question, are they?
Because the museum, I remember I had some friends over, we went to some Dublin tourist attraction. The one great thing about Ireland versus pretty much the rest of Europe, our museums are free. Every other country in Europe, you're paying money to go into the museums. The Leprechaun Museum is like €15. It's privately owned. And when you go in, you're just looking at oversized giant furniture, and it doesn't really give a great history about where this tradition comes from. But I will say there is also a milk churning museum in Ireland, and surely that's less interesting than a leprechaun museum.
Yeah.
But look, milk churn's a very serious thing, though. I mean,
Exactly.
If you grew up in my area, I mean, you milk the cows every morning and you put the milk in the churns and you put them out on the side of the road. Now, you're missing that one there.
And we
How
still
often has Michael said, if you grew up in my time?
Every time.
Well, I don't have my bus pass like Noel here beside me, but not far off it.
Well, I tell you, it's a great thing.
I'm looking forward.
If there is a bus, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, now HSE staff overpaid by over 20 million in 2 years, but more than half is yet to be recovered. That's somewhat mysterious to me.
How
Can someone
does that
explain
happen?
how? Yes.
How does that happen? I mean, this is so annoying to people who are working hard, paying their taxes and trying to survive and paying mortgages with interest rate increases and everything else. How does that happen? If that was any private business or private industry,
To be gone bust.
they'd be gone bust. And this over here, we've recovered half of it. How does that happen?
So
it's just unbelievable.
Apparently, among the explanations, people finishing up their contracts and the finance department not notified, people taking sick leave and deductions not made. Sounds like internal communication or lack thereof.
There's a lot of that.
That sounds genuine. There's a lot of criticism of Ireland. People just mouth off, we're a corrupt country. We're not. We're in one of the top 10 least corrupt countries in the world. And then you read something like that, and it's like, how can you say that? I mean, that just reeks of corruption. What you just said there, Will, just sounds like an excuse.
But responsibility, who's responsible?
Well, that's the thing.
One American president used to have the thing on his desk, the buck stops here. I mean, if there's a private company, a CEO, or there's various people, who is responsible for this? Who allowed this to happen? Somebody has to take responsibility for
Well,
it.
at the top of the food chain, well, I suppose the minister, but under the minister, Robert Watt, who is the Secretary General at the Department of Health and will soon have a salary of, I think, €308,000 after the latest increase.
Yes. No comment. But there you go.
But the theory being you pay to get the best and the brightest, and therefore with great responsibility you should have accountability.
Yeah, well, I would agree. However, if you notice there, following the crash of 2008, 2010, a lot of the banks here in Ireland put restrictions. Part of the problem was the bonuses. So the people at the top were driven to get those loans, to get the bonuses. And this was a global thing, and we've seen it here in Ireland. And then there's people talking about bringing back the bonuses. Now, I would have a fair insight into banking, as you're well aware, and I've kind of looked at this, and because you pay these people who are in that kind of vertical, doesn't mean you're going to get the best. So it doesn't matter how good is Mr. Watt? How good is these people who work in there that they deserve to be given this money, to be driven, and look what happened. The banks crashed the country. We were dependent on the Troika. We had to get bailouts, etc. And still hasn't been resolved. We're still down to 2.5 banks in the area, in the country. So I don't believe this about, this idea of paying somebody 300,000 or 400,000 euros and they're going to do a better job. Just doesn't happen.
We just need better systems, multiple systems that where there's a lot of overlap, where lots of people are accountable, and then you don't have one person or
accountability,
having to be accountable.
Yeah, okay.
Because
unpopular suggestion, just to see what
Yeah.
the panel thinks. Twice before we've had on board SNP. Colin McCarthy, the economist, and most recently in 2009-10 came in, looked at all the state spending, where should we chop, trying to bring everything under control, in theory make it more efficient. Even though times are good now, do we need a board SNP?
Board chop, be more like, I think. Look, it's Octavia made a point there. It's about accountability. You know, we've seen even recently, things happening where money goes astray in an area, and people say, "Oh, corruption." A lot of the time, it's not corruption; it's down to incompetence. Mm-hmm. You know, and a lot of people get these theories, and journalists will write these articles about corruption. It's incompetence. It's about the system that Octavia referred to there. It's about, like how many bankers went to jail? None. So
Well, not here. Bernie Madoff. And
Well,
I suppose.
yeah.
And then you look at our
There was-
neighbour Iceland.
There was Mr. Drum as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at Iceland; they locked them up.
prosecuted everyone that was responsible.
But you see, so we're living in a fairly small, tiny little country, on the western side of Europe, and we've got to think outside the box. We've got to look at what's happening out there, and what's happening in Castlepollard is that people are looking outside to see what systems are being used, and this is why I talk about the town teams. I think it's a massive thing that's coming to the area, and I understand originally it would have came from Minister Ring, Minister Humphreys, and now I seen a recent. We have a minister here now in Castlepollard, a recent minister. Peter Burke, and I've read the stuff that he has. So there is young people there. I think there's change coming to the country, and I think it's positive change and great.
Well, it's great to hear that, Noel, and it's great to hear something like you've been so positive. But we've talked about the HSE. I mean, there's another thing, and I suppose it refers to my industry. There's somewhere between 60 and 80,000 mortgage prisoners at the moment.
Yes, I agree.
Loans that were sold by banks. Why is it 60 to 80,000? Because I'm told by a senior politician that the banks haven't told the government how many have been sold. Some of those mortgage prisoners are now on 8 and 9% mortgages, when there are mortgages out there at 3 and 3.5%.
Exactly.
The money that's taken out of the economies of Castlepollard, Mullingar and every other town in Ireland is unbelievable. The social problems that's going to bring up, people, relationships breaking down because of financial pressure and everything. There's a horrendous story there behind some of that stuff that is not even being talked about.
I agree, and
Wow.
the point about that is this is about
Sorry, what's the solution then?
competition has to be the first solution.
Well, the quick solution is, and I've said this to politicians, said those loans need to be taken back, they need to be bought back.
So take over by the state and
Now, I
service
do,
at a market level of interest.
there is a certain percentage of what I call strategic defaulters that allow themselves to get into default on their mortgage and stuff, thinking there was going to be a big blanket rescue plan. It didn't happen. They all need to be examined. The credit unions have stepped up to the plate. Absolutely amazing. I think they did 70 million, and I heard a figure recently of lending in mortgages. They've gone into the mortgage market, they've also gone into the agricultural loan market, and having dealt with banks and credit unions and dealing with people and all the rest, the attitude of credit union is, okay, you might have a bad credit history somewhere there, but if you haven't dirtied your bid basically with us credit unions, we will talk to you, you can talk to them and all the rest.
But Michael,
there is a huge issue there.
Didn't these people make the decision to get into those loans at those rates, just like everyone else? But isn't the solution they're bankrupt if they can't? Now, I don't mean to sound harsh, but what is the
you have a very
difference
valid point, but people maybe took out a mortgage at the time, it could have been at 1% or 1.5% or whatever, or maybe you had the trackers and all the rest, but then because of whatever circumstances, and you can't put a blanket over this and say it was because of this or that or the other.
Yeah.
It could be family
Well,
circumstances, it could be unemployment, it could be etc. But a lot of those mortgage prisons, I call them, had actually done deals with their banks, be it split mortgages, be it this, that and the other, and the Irish Central Bank came out then and said to the banks, you need to sell those loans because they're non-performing loans.
Yes.
They were mopped up. I had this face to face with Michael Noonan, who was the Minister of Finance at the time, and he said vulture funds were good. We said to him, they're not good, Michael. But they sold them, you see, because then the banks cleared the loans off their books, and now it made their books look better. But then the vulture funds started putting on interest rates. I mean, why can Avant now at the moment offer you a fixed rate at 3.95%, and a vulture fund will be looking for 8.5%?
But see, Michael, where does
credit unions at lower rates? I'm sorry to interrupt, lady and
we
gentlemen,
need more competition.
But we are about to hit the stroke of 12, and time is up. So thank you to our Friday panel today, to Michael Farrell, to Noel Kinahan, to Keith Fay, to our co-presenter Octavia, to Michael,
good job, Octavia,
to Niall, and to Cameron and Sinead and all who put the programme together. And a very special thank you to Margaret, Lisa and Sabrina in Castlepollard, who set up nice and early for us. Back on your radio Monday morning from 9. Take care. Bye-bye.